Hi, folks. This is John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru, doing another interview. And today I've got a special guest by the name of Stacy Gulick. Stacy is an occupational therapist, and she happens to be one of the administrators for the Facebook page called Rehab Therapists for a Union. And in brackets, it says for all settings. Why is this significant? Because this Facebook page has 16,000 members. And that's no small number. I didn't even know there were 16,000 therapists in the United States. But I guess we're stronger than that because this union keeps growing. And I have a feeling it's going to grow even more after this interview. So first of all, I just want to say welcome to Stacy. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, one of the things, Stacy, I like to do with anybody that gets on these interviews is just kind of explain your background, how you became an OT, kind of what you've done with your OT career. Let's start off with that.
Well, currently I'm working as a traveling therapist, been doing that for a couple of years, which means my experience is in pretty much every setting an OTR can be in: school-based, outpatient clinic, inpatient rehab, skilled nursing facilities, you name it, I've worked there. And the travel industry has been hit especially hard right now. So this is very, very meaningful for us.
Well, I can imagine so, because we know, you and I both know that PRNs, especially in the SNF setting, have seen their hours cut drastically and they're not being called. So I can only imagine travel therapists are feeling it.
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing is that if you were PRN before, a lot of people, you're non-existent, and even some full and part-timers have been forced to go to PRN by their agencies, and thus, travel therapists have no place anymore in a lot of these settings due to the new changes.
So are you finding right now that you're looking for something on a more permanent basis?
Well, I would love to find something on a more permanent basis, but with the subsequent trickle down of thousands of therapists losing their jobs all in 1 month means that there's not a lot to be had. So I'm actually on a contract right now that is part-time, which is the first time I've ever had to do that.
Okay, folks, so you heard it from Stacy. She needs a full-time job. So when you hear her talk in this interview, you might realize she's a good asset. So, and where do you hail from?
I am from the upstate New York area. So not a city girl, a rural country girl.
Yeah, it's pretty up there. I've had some family up there, and I love driving through the mountains of northern New York. It's just real pretty.
It is gorgeous, and I'm currently on assignment in Vermont, and we've got dueling fall colors up here. It's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, I grew up in New Hampshire myself, so October is like the bomb in terms of colors, and I'm in Virginia now, and there's just nothing to compare. So anyway, I appreciate you sharing a little bit about yourself. But what I'd like you to do now is talk to us a little bit about Rehab Therapists for a Union. How did you get involved? How did you become an administrator? Let's start off with that.
Well, it really started off as grassroots as you can get. There was a couple of us on a different Facebook group for travelers, kind of talking about how as travelers we had no protection, in that if an employer decided to completely renege on the terms of a contract they had with us, that the agency that we were working through was not likely going to hold them to their contract. So contracts are absolutely useless in some cases, and we were just getting frustrated with the fact that we had nobody to go to when we would be unfairly treated, or there was even some legal action being taken against us. And so we kind of thought, geez, if we had a union or some other strong advocacy group, there would at least be somewhere for us to turn to when these things happened. And it so happened that when it comes to talk of unions, some people have a lot of misinformation and they're uncomfortable with it. So they asked us not to be discussing it on that particular Facebook page. And so we decided, well, then we need a platform for this because this really kind of needs to happen.
So when did you start your Facebook page?
The Facebook page is actually only 5 or 6 weeks old. So the
Wow.
fact that we have 16,000 members in a couple of weeks, I think really just says how much the therapy industry has been needing this for a long time.
You might not have seen this, but on my YouTube channel, I think it's been about a couple months. No, it was a few months ago. I had mentioned, yeah, this is like 6 or 7 months ago. I had mentioned the possibility that we might want to look at forming a union. And I think I lost my job over it, actually, which was kind of interesting. And I subsequently took that video down because I was looking for a new job. But anyway, the fact that this is so new and that you've grown so fast just points to the absolute relevance of this particular topic. So this is not long in the making at all. And one of the things that I think some people would like to know is because you're obviously you're coming together as a group of individuals, and I've seen some of the chat going on in the Facebook page that come from different perspectives, and for example, different political perspectives. Um, and I can see both the argument for and against unions. I used to be a union member myself. Most therapists probably have never experienced a union. Do you have any experience in unions yourself?
I am quite fortunate in that I am one of the therapists that have been a member of a union previously as a working therapist. I worked for the VA system for a while, and they do have a union of federal employees. It's not specific to therapists, but it does offer protection. And I also grew up in a union household. Both of my parents were teachers that belonged to a strong teachers union. So while it wasn't like normal dinner conversation to talk about, yay, how great are unions, it was something that came up in that, when there was a conflict, that there was a mediator and someone that people could go to.
Now, does the group have kind of a mission or vision for what a union would be? Or let's say the Facebook page itself. What's your hope that this Facebook page will promote, or what will be the outcome of it?
We're really hoping that this Facebook page is just a stepping stone, that it's a place for us to get the initial potential membership together that we need to then grow into and possibly vote on becoming a more formal union.
And what are some of the barriers that you see therapists might face to forming a union?
I think the main barrier that we're facing right now is that there's a lot of misinformation about unions out there, that there are certain geographic areas that are more pro-union and some, more against unions. And so people are coming in with these beliefs that they've grown up with for a long time and what a union is or does, and not realizing that a union is actually whatever the membership needs it to be. That the membership that actually is going to be the one voting on how this is run and what kind of union it ultimately becomes. There are different types of unions, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. So education is a big stumbling block right now that we're hoping the Facebook page can be a platform to educate and let people know what the options could potentially be and where this could go if they want it to go in that direction. The other stumbling blocks are, of course, the fact that nobody wants to lose their job. As you mentioned, there are unethical employers out there who, once they start hearing union murmuring, they let people go. And that's because unions give the power back to the employees, and thus the employer might lose a little bit of that power, and they don't want to see that happen. It's important, I think, that people realize that there are federal laws. So even if you work in a state that is not union friendly or a right to work state, that there are still federal laws that make it illegal for employers to do this, actually.
That's really interesting. And you brought up a really good point that a union can be basically anything the members want it to be. One of the concerns that I've raised is obviously we as employees, we'd like protections. I mean, we went to school for a long time. We had to pay a lot of money for that. Our licensure is basically stating that we have a level of expertise that's valuable. And so we would like to be paid accordingly. We would like to have guaranteed benefits like any other person that has a full-time job. But one of the concerns I've raised, and perhaps you could speak to this a little bit, and by the way, some of these questions I'm asking Stacy, I didn't warn her about, but I'm just free-flowing thinking about some of them, and I know she can answer them. Is this the concern that somebody comes between us and the patient? And I see a union as being a potential avenue to let us have more control over what we say between us and the patient and the doctor determining what the care plan should look like.
I would have to agree in that unions are wonderful bargaining chips for the employees to protect their own salaries, to protect their benefits, hours, things like that. But when it comes to healthcare providers, I think the number one concern, and this is echoed on the Facebook page from the comments that we see from members, is that we're sick and tired of administrators dictating how we're going to treat our patients, and that we want the power back on us, that we know the best way to treat our patients. We are trained, we stay up on the latest information and the best treatments, and we ultimately want what's best for our patients. And it should be up to the therapist to decide what that course of treatment is going to be, not some bean counter in an office trying to save a few dollars.
Amen. Couldn't have said it better myself. That was excellent. Yeah, because one of the things that the Affordable Care Act brought into play was the fact that we're supposed to have moved into a much more patient-centric care model. And so when you have Humana, for example, telling you that every single knee replacement patient, let's just say, you only get $34,000 for a knee replacement, and that's all you get, and everybody gets to divvy up that pot. And it doesn't matter that you have an individual patient with a knee replacement that costs more, that they get the same pot. That just doesn't make any sense. If we've got patient-centric care, that does not jive with how we're being treated as clinicians with third-party payers.
Yeah, and really a lot of attention gets put on the payment system. Before it was RUG scores that were not appropriate. Now it's the new patient-driven payment model, kind of taking the flack for the changes and all the layoffs. But ultimately, the enemy, what it comes down to, is companies that typically are a middleman trying to increase their profit margin as much as possible and doing it off of the back of patients and therapists.
Right. Yeah, Medicare, when they came out with PDPM and PDGM coming up in January, they were pretty clear in the fact that, there will be times when you'll make money, times you break even, times you lose money. But what they tried to develop PDPM and PDGM to do is, on average, if you're doing what's right, your company will survive, you will make money, people will get paid for what they do, if you do what is right. But what some companies have decided to do is treat every single patient as a profit margin. And that won't work. That's not sustainable.
Absolutely. I happen to have been placed in a skilled nursing facility in the beginning of October and got to experience these changes firsthand. This happened to be at least currently, ethically run rehab department, and really saw no changes to patient care with the two payment model. And in fact, was expecting to make more money under the new payment model. However, unfortunately, in the rehab world we live in, that's not usually the case. There's usually a lot more oversight from administrations, middlemen companies who own the rehab departments, and to them, it's profit margin for them and their shareholders.
Right. Well, that's a really good point. There are ethical companies out there. I'm blessed to work for a very ethical organization. There are still some out there, and folks, if you're being pushed to do unethical things, while there are still opportunities, because this may diminish more and more over time, do try to find yourself a good position with an ethical company. And the big thing, and I think Stacy, you would agree, stick your ground. Stand up to what you know is ethical decision making in your patient care. Don't kowtow to people telling you what you should do or should not do and put themselves between you and the patient because they don't belong there. They didn't treat the patient or assess them.
Absolutely. And if you're worried about your job, you have every right to be worried about your job. But the
Absolutely.
tens of thousands of therapists that lost their jobs earlier this month, it made no difference if they were towing the company line and fudging numbers, or if they were being ethical to the stance of, what their license required. Your job's still in jeopardy either way. You might as well be able to live with yourself the next day and stand up for the way we know our patients should be cared for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's been some posts on Rehab Therapists for a Union where people have commented on how they were doing everything by the book, and yet they still got let go, laid off, and so you're right. Stand up for what's true and right, even in the midst of this stuff. Well, let me ask you, Stacy. Obviously, you guys have a purpose for existing, and you're probably pulling together some talent right now to make the reality in the future of a union forming actually come into being. How can therapists that are watching this video right now get better involved with your Facebook page and ultimately with the formation of a union?
That is a fantastic question. Every Wednesday, we are posting where our movement currently stands and some actions that our members can take. So right now, there is a change.org petition that is circulating around. We're looking for another 20,000 signatures on that. We already have 55,000. There is a survey that we also share on our Facebook page that we are looking for those affected by the recent changes and how they've been affected so that we actually have some hard number and data to take to the people that are in charge of CMS and in charge of our trade organizations and in charge politically of this change that has come down. Right now, we are in a big numbers game. Before we can actually form a formal union, we need people from every state, preferably from every different major company, and we need to have the numbers. So while 16,000 sounds like a super impressive number, we're being told by a lot of the people in the know when it comes to unions that that's still too small. We need a lot more. So we need people at this point to share and be brave enough to share. We have a couple of videos on our on our Facebook page that we're just asking people to be brave enough to share, to let people know that they are pro-union and union is the way that we need to go.
Well, folks, just as you heard, I mean, the best way to get involved is spread the word. And if you happen to know therapists in different states, have them watch this video. Share that. Feel free to share this video. That way, we can get the word out and drive up the numbers for. Again, it's called Rehab Therapists for a Union, and then in parentheses it says for all settings. This is a Facebook page. And you can send, now it's still a request to join, right, Stacy?
Yes, we do ask some qualifying questions to try and ensure that it is legit therapists that are joining this group. If you answer all those questions, you will be automatically admitted. If you do not answer those questions, we'll hunt you down and make sure you are who you say you are.
We will find you. We know where you are. Well, Stacy, is there any final words that you'd like to say?
Just thank you so much for inviting me to speak on this very important and relevant topic. We actually didn't know how relevant it was going to be when we started this group in the end of September, and the timing was right. I think that this was inspired and it's time for this to happen.
Excellent. Well, Stacy Gulick, OTR, and one of the administrators for Rehab Therapists for a Union, I just want to say thank you for being on. And
Thank you for having
again,
me.
you're welcome. And just as a reminder, please look up that Facebook page. Again, this is John Adamson, the Rehab and Documentation Guru. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and God bless.